Hello and a warm welcome to today's webinar. Great to have you all here. We'll just give it another moment for every one of us to join, and then we can just start together. For those of you who have just joined, welcome. Glad you could make it. A few quick technical notes before we begin. This webinar today is being recorded and your cameras and microphones are disabled. So if you have any questions, please submit them in the chat function and we'll pick up a selection of questions in a Q&A session at the end. And no worries if we don't get to your question, we'll follow up on that by email, and you will also receive the presentation slides and the recording. All right, then let's get started. Today's speaker is joining us from the Netherlands. Thank you, Bastian, for joining us. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Adelina, and it's my pleasure to be here on this wonderful sunny day. There you go.
All right, then let's dive right in.
Yeah, let's do so. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining this webinar on the next gen HR and payroll. My name is Bastian Carlos. I'm an executive vice president at Solaris, Benelux to be precise. And if you look at my experience, I've spent over 20 years working on HR and payroll transformation for multinational organizations. So from large-scale outsourcing to cloud HCM migrations. And I've done so across Europe, Asia, Pacific, and North America. But what I want to share today with you is not necessarily a product pitch. It's actually a strategic conversation about why so many HR and payroll investments deliver less than expected, and what organizations that get it right are doing differently. This presentation will be roughly 30-35 minutes of content, and then we will also cover the questions and answers. Let's not wait any longer. Let's get started. So, the agenda. We actually have 6 chapters that we want to discuss today. So first of all, the starting point. We diagnose why legacy HR and payroll architectures are hitting their limits. This is the why change argument, obviously. Then secondly, the shift. We look at how leading organizations are rethinking their architecture, separating clean data foundations from automation and intelligence. We have the section 3, and then we're talking about payroll at the center. We explain why payroll is not just a back office function, but the backbone of the entire transformation. On the section 4, we will cover the solution and practice. We will look at the strategic decisions that leaders need to make, what Solaris enables, and the real outcomes from real organizations. Section 5, we will discuss the key takeaways. And I'll give you a list of 5 things that you really need to remember. And then lastly, we will discuss the Q&A and the next steps. So, like Adelina already mentioned, please raise your questions via the chat throughout the whole session. And we will obviously capture them and address them. And if something resonates or puzzles you as we go, make a note. Your question may be on the minds of others in the room. And at the end, we may not be able to cover all the questions, but we will come back to all the questions if needed directly. So, the starting point. Let's start where most organizations find themselves today, with HR and payroll systems that were built for a different era. The starting point matters because transformation decisions are only taken seriously when the pain is understood. So before we talk about where to go, we need to be honest on where most organizations are standing right now. The premise we will explore is most HR platforms were designed to store and record data, not to automate, not to deliver insight. And that design choice was made decades ago. It's now holding organizations back in ways that are costing them time, money, risk, exposure every single month. Systems built to record and not to perform. Organizations didn't end up with fragmented HR and payroll by accident. It happened gradually, rationally, one decision at a time. So you will start with the core HR system, then you add a payroll module or a specialist payroll vendor because the core system doesn't handle the country well, and then time and attendance, then a benefits platform, then a local compliance tool for Germany, France, the Netherlands, and then a talent management layer. Each decision makes sense in isolation. However, the result is a patchwork. Employee data is spread across 5, 8, sometimes even 15 different systems. No single source of truth. And the team spending enormous energy every pay cycle just reconciling data between systems. Key insight from the Solaris white paper, the result is not simplicity, but a complex patchwork. Employee data and payroll data is spread across applications and local databases, forcing teams to manually reconcile, duplicate entries, and spreadsheet workarounds. This complexity is not just inefficient, it's actually a strategic liability. It prevents automation, clouds reporting, and creates compliance exposure. So, there are 4 ways this fragmentation actually holds you back. Let's run through. First, disconnected data. Errors and delays. When HR updates an employee record in one system and payroll reads it from the other, mismatches happen. Manual reconciliation is a workaround. It's a structural symptom of architecture failure. Then the limited visibility, no clear view. If workforce data lives in 5 systems, none of which talk to the finance in real time, there is no meaningful insight into where people spend their time or what they actually cost. Decisions get made on stale numbers. Then the fragmented workflow, slowing everything down. Approvals that should take hours take days because teams are toggling between applications, copying data into spreadsheets and waiting for file transfers. Every handoff is a risk point, unfortunately. And then the compliance risk. There is the urgent one, that's the urgent one right now. GDPR has teeth. EU Pay Transparency Directive is creating new reporting applications. Organizations with fragmented, inconsistent employee data are exposed. You cannot demonstrate pay equity or data governance if your data doesn't agree with itself. We described the problem. Let's talk about how the organizations that are getting this right are thinking differently. The key insight in this section is not about product. It's about architecture philosophy. The shift is conceptual before it is technical. Organizations seeing the biggest gains are not the ones that bought the most expensive HR suite. They are the ones that rethought how data is structured, governed, and used. This decision actually matters. And this is what the next few slides explain. Unbundling the traditional model. This model assumed one large monolithic system that could do everything. Store data, run workflows, produce reports, manage compliance, and deliver user experience. In practice, that system becomes a bottleneck. Too rigid to adapt, too complex to upgrade, and too slow to integrate with new tools. The new model separates 2 distinct responsibilities. First, trust the data function and think of this as the bedrock, the foundation, right? Clean, well-governed employee and payroll data that is consistent, accessible, and secure across the whole organization and system landscape for that matter. It's not just a database, it's a commitment to data quality, ownership of standardization, and the data itself, obviously, shared definitions for worker types, pay components, job structures. One version of the truth. Second, an intelligent and automation layer. This sits on top of this foundation, the data foundation layer. It includes workflows, self-service tools, AI validation, dashboards, and analytics. Critically, this layer can evolve, be replaced, or upgraded without disturbing the foundation beneath it. And then when you connect in both, you have one single entry point. Data entered once, validated at the source, flowing automatically wherever it's needed. What's the keynote for my white paper here? The competitive advantage no longer comes from owning the most feature-rich HR application. It comes from having reliable, high-quality data and the ability to use that data effectively. This is the architectural unbundling that leading organizations actually already adopted. This is also the philosophy behind how Solaris has designed its approach. So, why legacy architecture falls short? Also here we have 4 components. First of all, the rigid data structure. Legacy HR systems were designed around static worker types and single pay models. The modern workforce includes gig workers, global mobile employees, multi-country contractors, employees with complex reward models. Anyways, legacy structures cannot accommodate this without customization. And of course, customization is expensive, fragile, and upgrade blocking. Batch integrations. Most legacy systems exchange data via scheduled file transfers, I should say. A change made in HR at 4 p.m. may not be payable until the next morning. Because, of course, this is all orchestrated by batches and the batch run. That delay means manual reconciliation, late corrections, and a permanent gap between the systems. Errors compound overnight before anyone catches them. Then the country customizations. Every single specific workaround that has been built into the system is a liability. It weakens the global process consistency, creates a unique technical depth, and makes an upgrade a negotiation with IT. Organizations with more than 20 countries often have also 20 variations of their own processes. Last but not least, the limited transparency. This is an auditability problem. When a payroll result is wrong, can you trace it back to the source? In most legacy architectures, the answer is not in every case. Data has moved through multiple systems, been transformed by integration, and arrived at table, often in a state no one can carefully explain. Sorry, that last one to say no one can fully explain. That is a compliance and a governance failure. Let's move on to the next. The automation-led operating model. End-to-end digital processes. Payroll no longer starts at payroll. It starts when an employee clocks in or when a manager approves a salary change. Every event follows automatically through a controlled, traceable workflow from a time capture all the way to the payment. No manual uploads, no rekeying, one control path. Embedded AI operations and validation. Here comes the automation. AI agents in this model do not replace HR professionals. They do the repetitive checking work that currently takes hours of work every pay cycle, comparing data, flagging anomalies, identifying values that fall outside of the expected ranges. Human attention is reserved for genuine exceptions, not routine reconciliation. And this is what we mean when we say always accurate results. Then the integrated self-service. Employees and managers are not passive users. They update their own data, they submit changes, simulate payroll impacts, and with built-in validation checks that prevent errors at the source. This dramatically reduces the volume of corrections downstream. Continuous analytics. Real-time dashboards mean HR and finance don't wait for month-end reports to understand workforce costs. They can see trends as they emerge, forecast proactively, and identify process inefficiencies before they become costly problems. Modular by design. Each function, for HR, payroll, time, benefits, talent, can evolve at its own pace. You don't need to change everything at once. The modular architecture lets you upgrade one component without destabilizing the rest. And this is what Solaris calls the always on, always accurate, always accountable payroll model. So our next and third section is about payroll at the center. So we just covered the architecture and data. Now let's focus on the function that sits at the center of all of it, payroll. There is a perception problem we need to address. Payroll is often seen as a back office cost center, a necessary administrative function, something to keep the lights on. But this view is outdated. And the organizations that are winning in the HR transformation have figured it out. Payroll is the intersection of HR data, financial data, and employee experience. When it works well on clean data, with automation, it becomes the backbone of operational insight across the entire business. The next slide will explain what it actually means in practice. So, payroll runs on clean, connected data. What does that mean? Stronger reporting trust for finance and compliance leaders. This is very important. When payroll runs on clean, standardized, automatically validated data, the numbers can actually be trusted. HR and finance will stop arguing about headcount figures and cost allocations. Reporting becomes a reliable foundation for decisions and not a source of debate. Then the faster regulatory response. The compliance landscape is accelerating. GDPR, EU pay transparency, country-specific labor law changes. An organization with fragmented manual payroll processes reacts to these changes very slow and expensive. One with clean data flows and automated processes can adapt in days and not in months. Then the better employee experience. At its most basic level, employees need to be paid correctly and on time. Beyond that, modern system provides employees visibility into their pay, enable self-service for queries, and remove the friction on routine interactions. That directly impacts trust and engagement. Then the processing side. An important one for the operations and HR transformation. Redesigning payroll processes requires engaging the people who use them. Modern systems surface the unnecessary steps. The manual workarounds, the bottlenecks that have been invisible for years. You can't fix what you can't see. Also, referring back to the white paper, a key insight is that payroll data provides insight in how well the wider HR and finance ecosystem performs. It's not just a transaction, it's a diagnostic tool, actually. The fourth foundation automation depends on. Automation is only as good as the data it runs on. It's a critical point that many organizations miss. They invest in automation tools before fixing their data, and then wonder why the automation doesn't deliver. We're quite direct in the white paper, most payroll errors stem from poor upstream data, HR, time, or benefits. Fix the data foundation first and then automate. 4 things organizations must actually secure. Standardized definitions. One agreed definition for a worker, a pay component, and a time cycle. Shared across all countries and all functions. Without this, every country runs its own logic and global reporting is impossible. Automated source to payroll flows. Data should come directly from HR and time systems into payroll without anyone touching a file, uploading a spreadsheet, or rekeying a number. Every manual transfer is actually a risk. Automation eliminates that risk. Then the clear governance and accountability. Someone owns each data element. AI-supported validation rules catch errors and at the point of entry and not at among them. This is compliant by design and not by correction. Timely aggregation and reporting. Data consolidated in near real time and not in a monthly batch. HR and finance get visibility into workforce costs and trends as they actually develop and not after effect. This is the infrastructure that makes everything possible. Solaris refers to this as the data foundation. And this is the starting point for every transformation engagement. Section 4, the solution and practice. We've covered the problem clearly. Now let's get practical. What should organizations actually do? What does Solaris enable? And what have real organizations achieved? Four strategic implications for leaders. Reframe the operating model. Don't think about this as choosing a new HR system. Think about how workforce data need to be structured, governed, and shared. The question is not which vendor, it's how do we create one version of the truth across HR, finance, and payroll. And that requires a clear data strategy before any technology or vendor decision. Strengthen data foundations before scaling automation. This is the most important thing to get right. Automation amplifies whatever is in your data. If definitions are inconsistent and ownership is unclear, automation increases speed but not accuracy. You move faster in the wrong direction. You need clean data first. Then redefine roles and capabilities. As the transactions become more automated, the HR and payroll team, their role changes. Processing gives way to oversight, exception management, data stewardship, and performance insight. This is not a reduction in the team, it's an elevation. It requires investment in new skills and closer collaboration between HR, payroll, finance, and IT. Reassess the sourcing service delivery models. In a unified automated environment, a managed service partner cannot be evaluated purely on transaction volumes or SLA metrics. The right question is, can this partner support standardized global processes, maintain transparency across data flows, and help us improve automation maturity over time? Last but not least, the payoff. Organizations that take this broader view elevate workforce operations from an administrative function into a strategic capability. Then, what Solaris enables. The key reassurance in this slide is the phrase, without requiring a disruptive rip and replace. Many organizations delay transformations because they fear the disruption and the risk. Solaris is designed to work differently. The main three pillars that Solaris enables is, first of all, an accountable partner. This is the operational centerpiece of the Solaris model. Instead of managing relationship with multiple different vendors across countries, each with their own contracts, escalation path, and data formats, you have one accountable partner, one point of contact, one standard, one set of expectations, and Solaris coordinates across 150 countries, which means global consistency and local compliance are both managed under the same roof. This dramatically simplifies vendor management and accountability for that matter. Software transformation. Solaris has deep, proven experience with SAP, HCM, SuccessFactors, Workday, and Oracle as examples. This means migration from an on-premise platform or an older HRMS to a modern cloud ecosystem that is actually managed by people that have done it before, at scale, in complex environments. The expertise reduces implementation risk significantly. Services and ongoing support. Transformation is not a one-time project. It's a continuous journey. Local specialists within the Solaris network ensure processes, data quality, and automation levels are continuously maintained and improved. You won't just go live and then figure it out on your own. So in conclusion, if you look at this as an end-to-end model, technology, services, and governance under one partner, this is what enables customers. This enables customers to simplify at their own pace while capturing value throughout the implementation. Proven outcomes with real organizations. So let's take a look at 3 client cases. First of all, Metsä Group. Metsä Group is a global forest industry company that consolidated their HR and payroll across 28 countries onto a single Solaris platform. The situation before was a fragmented, inconsistent process, multiple processes actually, across different markets. After implementation and onboarding, we ended up with a unified data model that supports consistent reporting, faster payroll cycles, and the ability to roll out automation and analytics at scale. The key outcome is not only efficiency, it's control. Spanning 8 countries, one version of the truth. Then, secondly, Eurowings. This European airline centralized payroll operations for 5,500 employees across relevant European countries. Before, they had a fragmented country-by-country payroll management. And after, they have standardized processes, simplified compliance management, and a strong foundation for future HCM integrations. For an airline operating across multiple jurisdictions, pay transparency and compliance are simply not optional. This was a strategic imperative. Danske Bank. Unified local HR and payroll into one cloud-based model. The outcome, operational efficiency, a better employee experience, and a scalable foundation for future growth. Then if you look at the common thread across all 3, we're talking about clean data, unified processes, and one accountable partner being Solaris. These are not simply technology stories. These are actually data governance and operating model stories. The technology is the enabler. So we covered a lot of ground today. And before we open up for questions, let me give you 5 things that I want you to take away from this conversation. 5 essentials. First, legacy has limits. The systems most organizations rely on were designed to record and store data. They were not designed to automate workflows, generate insight, or support AI-driven decision-making. The gap between what they can do and what modern enterprises need is actually widening every year. So we need to unbundle the model. The most effective architecture separates trusted data foundations from the intelligence and automation layer above it. These two responsibilities require different design principles and should evolve independently from each other. Trying to do both in one monolithic system is the trap that many organizations are currently stuck in. The common thread: automation is as good as the data it runs on. Clean data turns payroll into operational intelligence. And self-paced, non-disruptive transactions allow organizations to move from fragmented to unified without a big bang replacement. Payroll is central. Payroll is not a back office function. It's the intersection of HR, finance, and employee experience. When payroll runs on clean data and automated processes, it becomes a source of operational excellence, compliance assurance, and workforce insight. Last but not least, the one partner Solaris model. One accountable partner across technology, services, and governance in over 150 countries. This is the practical path that makes all of this possible. It's not a replacement of everything at once. It's a steady, low-risk transition at your own pace, and with value captured throughout. So, we have covered the structural limits of legacy systems. Through the architecture shift to what Solaris enables in practice. And now I would love to hear what's on top of mind for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Bastian, for that very insightful session. As mentioned before we wrap up, let's take a look at a few questions. Let's start with this one. We want to make the best use of AI efficiency gains.
Good one. As I mentioned before, data. Data is key. So start with your data and not the AI tooling. AI in HR and payroll is only as good as the data it runs on. So if you feed an AI tool inconsistent, duplicated, or ungoverned data, it will produce faster, wrong answers. So the starting point is establishing standardized data definitions across HR and payroll. Share definitions for the worker types, the pay components, etc. Once that foundation is clean and governed, AI can be applied. The practical answer to where to start is actually also a payroll validation and exception management. So this is a contained, high frequency, and also high stake process where AI agents can take over the repetitive checking work.
Okay, thank you. On to the next question. What are the best use cases for AI from other customers, and which ones are the most impactful and successful?
Yeah, good one, Adelina. You have a smart audience. I would say payroll accuracy and validation is the highest impact starting. That goes into so many areas, and definitely when you look at it from the time consumption, but also value for the company, that's big. So to make it maybe a little bit more practical, values outside of normal ranges, missing data, inconsistencies between HR and payroll records, that is all hindering. And if you actually do that validation in an automated way, it actually catches errors that previously only surfaced after payment. And you do that early in the process, like avoiding a costly correcting, and you actually keep their trust, right, instead of damaging.
Okay.
So That's one, but I think we should cover more. The compliance monitoring and regulatory response is really a strategic one, I would say. So that should also be explored. And this really goes into how quickly organizations can respond to changes in legislation. And especially within the EU, there are quite some changes in the law. Think about GDPR, think about the mentioned EU pay transparency. So that's a good area as well. And last but not least, self-service with the intelligent guardrails. Yeah, the broadest employee impact, so to speak. So when employees and managers can update their own data, and with AI validation checks, it actually prevents errors from entering the payroll stream.
All right, then last but not least, in regards of time, on to our last question. What would be the best approach when starting to work with AI? Big transformation or start small and then step by step?
Yeah, as I alluded to this already, step by step, no break. And this is a deliberate design principle in how we work at Salaris. So the goal is to transition at your own pace while already capturing the benefits and the value throughout. A big bang, rip and replace, carries enormous risk at an opposite. Business disruption, data migration failures, change fatigue, the near certainty that the new system inherited the old system data quality problems at speed. So definitely step by step.
Okay. Big thank you to you, Bastian, for sharing your expertise today. Should you have any further questions, feel free to use the chat function or reach out by email afterwards, and we're happy to get back to you. And of course, also thank you to everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. And we hope that you could take away some insightful ideas, some inspiration. And yeah, with that, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And I will close the webinar shortly. Thank you, Bastian, for your time.
Thank you as well. Thanks, everyone.
See you next time. Bye-bye.